So if we put the requests coming to hot and heavy from now, the Agile team, they will get lost. So we marketed from the point of where we knew if we are testing, we start looking for ways to test that don't necessarily require top-line assistance as you figure out how to then launch full scale.
Okay.
Maybe to add
everything is an execution.
Yeah.
Yes,
true.
Petra.
I think maybe to add on to what Winnie has said, in my own environment right now, what happens is that we start from inception. So we know everybody has a certain roadmap, and the expectation is that they are going to be doing, I don't know, X number of things that need some sort of branding, marketing support, some sort of CBM campaigns of some sort, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that this is coming, this is in the pipeline. So we plan with that in mind. And then what happens because we use agencies to do, unlike Winnie's former life, we'll use agencies to be able to help us to produce. And of course, there's always prioritization so they come back to you depending on what it is that is of most value to you. Because then again, now we have to prioritize and go back to them and tell them what's of most value for them to help us, go out there. And sometimes, as you're saying, it's a negotiation. So if, for example, we want to take, I don't know, thing X out there and they've got their pipeline chock-a-block with something else that's going on, then, we negotiate and we say, okay, fine, so give us TVCs only. And then we start with that. So, something to start with Agile. So we build on it. We communicate maybe via, I don't know, CVM messaging that this is out there for the pilot group, for example, just to be able to get them a feel of what is happening there. So it's a negotiation, as she's saying. You can, I don't know how your own environment works, but we negotiate with the vendor in terms of the agency, in terms of what is of most value to you first. So that's what we put at the top of the pile. If your priorities change, we flip it. If you need maybe just to be agile about it, are we able to give you something that can be able to manage for you to get started while we are servicing everything else? So it's, as she's saying, it's a complete negotiation for you to be able to, to get. But I think planning mostly for you might be, not even for you, for us all, planning is like the most key thing. Because you see, you don't wake up one day and decide, okay, now I'm going to market now. You know it for an amount of time. So if you get your planning right and communicate appropriately to the stakeholders, you may actually be able to achieve most of the time. Sometimes maybe not so much, but most of the time, if you do your planning right and you communicate early enough, you should be able to get it.
Yeah.
I think.
So that brings me to the question of sometimes on the go-to-market. So sometimes you find that, for example, where I am, so we tend to break it down into 3 different launches. So we have the alpha launch, we have the beta launch. Actually 4. We have the alpha launch, beta launch, soft commercial launch, then the full commercial launch. And sometimes depending on how well the management wants this thing to go, or how well the stakeholders have invested in this, they might even want a pre-alpha launch. So in your own opinion and in your own practice, what's the significance of having these different phases? Because yes, the product is already in production. So what's the significance of having to open the product to a few select number of people, let's say an alpha, then graduate to beta, then eventually graduate to full commercial? Is it also possible to just go full commercial? And in what scenarios can you go full commercial? And in what scenarios can you decide to, let me break it down into those 3 stages and progress until I get to my full commercial?
I think that just depends on the organization's risk appetite, to be honest. Different organizations can go full blast, and it depends on also the nature of the product. Is it an internal product? If it's an internal product, you can be able to say kinda, because at the end of the day, the people you're interfacing with are your colleagues, and you can be able to manage that. But the reverse is also scary. In different organizations, for example, a bank can't just decide to release 100% sometimes. So you release them segmentally just to make sure, and also keep learning. So using scaling tactics in releasing what is okay. I was being told, and I'm not yet able to verify this, like for example, Netflix, I was told the code in production. I can't factualize that. I've tried to look for that info. I'm not able.
Uh-huh.
But the one thing they do in their systems, they do have flags. So they will release to a certain region in the world, and they'll release that feature and then monitor that particular region on how it responds to it, and then continuously scaling it to other regions. That's a good thing, but the risk also with that, especially if it's a new product, is that you can be the first to market and then we forget you. We have so many products like those. You can think about when Uber Eats probably was there before Glovo, but which one do we have all of us on our phone? So thinking about it like that, sometimes there's somebody who's telling me the Chinese market has mastered being second to market, but being the best. So you have a brilliant idea, you take it to market, and then since you didn't scale it quick enough, you get forgotten. So it's a tricky balance depending on what you're working on and what you're working with. Yeah.
And it's interesting you've mentioned something about scaling it up quickly. And this resonates with what I need to ask much later about driving adoption amongst users. So, the issue of scaling sometimes can be very tricky. So, being a new product, and there's some jittery feelings amongst even investors. I mean, someone wants to really ensure that my product, there are those people who want to ensure that it's fully commercially viable fully. There are those who want just to get a feel of it, then add more to it. And at the same time, there are users whom you're giving a taste and the feel of the same product. So in terms of scaling, how do you drive adoption amongst users? And what are some of the techniques that you can actually use to influence behavior, influence use and such kind of things?
Well, in my opinion, I think it depends on what you're trying to drive usage for. So if I'm thinking in my own context right now, we've got, I think we've got a new app that we're trying to drive out into market. And of course, a lot of, our matrices around them will be mostly, acquisition, and also there'll be a lot of usage, metrics around it. So for us to be able to drive this, mostly it's around on-ground activations, which we normally use, have people on the ground, depending on how we want to go to market. So the go-to-market mostly will have on-ground activations and things like that, or depending on what it is that you're trying to scale, isn't it? And then we'll also have a lot of CVM campaigns based on, data sets that we are looking at. We'll do propensity modeling to be able to know, which of our databases that we have of people, how exactly do we go? I mean, which are the people who are more likely to uptake our apps based on maybe previously who has been uptaking apps more, who uses data more, who, so I think for us, mostly it's been data analytics, to be honest, to figure out customer patterns, to be able then to send very targeted CVM campaigns, for example, to be able to, because like I remember when we got the M-Pesa consumer app, initially when it was announced, everybody, uptook it, and then we saw a rather skip deep in uptick. And so we did propensity modeling. We got the people who we needed, who were more likely to take up the app, and then we set up CVM campaigns, and after that we saw a quick uptick. But you see, that was specific to the Safaricom app, isn't it? Then there's some which we are struggling with, to be honest. We tried the same tactics and we are still struggling, where we have, bill manager or something where we're already on ground and we're trying to scale it up, and it's just not happening despite the fact that this is available to everybody. So I think, in my opinion, it's very specific, and it has to be really, really research based, right? It has to be data driven, where you look at what are you trying to scale up first of all, and then you look around what are the various things that you can be able to do to make it happen. So some fail, some succeed, and as we learn from them, we then take a turnaround and upscale using other methods. So we keep pivoting a lot to be able to see how we can be able to scale up. That has been my experience. Practically speaking, it's easier said than done, but it's achievable. But you have to be ready to be, to keep pivoting, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and then keep pivoting.
So probably to add to that,
there's a theory that Simon Sinek presents. I think it's called something to do with the diffusion of innovation. But he tries to explain that whenever you're chasing an innovation, or rather whenever you're pushing an innovation to the market, you can try and cluster your market, your target market into various segments. So probably you have the first composition, which is around 3% or thereabout, which comprises of other competing innovators. Then you have now the other portion around 13.5% put in there, which comprises again of early adopters. And now you have now the early majority, which probably comprises of a larger 34%. So the rest of the segmentation comprises of the late majority and now the laggards. Those are the people now. Once the change has taken shape, they have no option until the only option for them is just to transition. So why is this important? So for him, focus on the early adopters and the innovators. Yeah. So the early majority only gets to adopt, or rather gets to come on board to your innovation in this case, once they have seen it working with the early adopters. Yeah. So for him, I think it's something probably we can also try to adopt and apply. So if you have that segmented target, whom we know, we have our fellow innovators, and then we have our early adopters. Focus on those, and then those will drive now the rest of the guys to be able to adopt.
Now, an interesting point there. Sorry, I was mute. Sorry. So an interesting point there, Kigoto. Now, I'll take you back to banking. And sometimes when you look at banking, most of the products that's being churned out, sometimes they tend to target current customers or current users. So let's take an example of the omni-channel. And I'm seeing so many banks right now are driving the omni-channel experience. So, and again, it talks about how to be ahead of your competitors. So at this particular point, so how then do you drive adoption? Because you need to satisfy your current users, but at the same time, you want to create an experience that even someone who is already on a different channel somewhere else, let's talk about I&M. So you want to attract the same customers who are, or let's say are at stand chat. So you want to bring them on board. So at that particular point, how do you balance such a demographic? Because you need to look at existing customers, but at the same time, you also need to put your eye or keep your eye on new customers.
Awesome. So when you look at the banking model per se, I think it's one of the oldest banking institutes, not the business institutes in the universe. So banking in its totality, I could say they're not sort of like driven to be early adopters to these changes. And whenever, let's say, for example, the boom regarding, for example, something like the omni channel experience that all the banks are now chasing to arrive at, is because they have first watched from a safe distance and seen probably other European banks being able to implement the same. Yeah. So the balance is very important, because I remember even when Backbase was trying to bring this transition in place, there was a lot of points when probably just because probably we didn't take time just to understand our customer experiences and what their probably their trends and their preferences are. We face a lot of challenges, and even at some point having to take a step back and moving the target release date. I think when was it by a quarter or something? So ideally, for me, I would say if you want to get the right balance, yes, not saying that probably we are chasing perfection. No. But just take time to understand your customer preferences, your customer trends, and even better still, even if you want to sort of like bring new customers to bank, then have a target where you're targeting them for what value proposition. Just take time to understand the segment that you're targeting. Again, understand the customers that you already have already in pocket. Failure to which, then you stand a chance to lose both. So that point of learning, that moment in time of learning, your existing docket and that target that you need to chase. Learn that first. If not, take a step back.
Someone wants to add that to that?
I don't want to add something to that because unfortunately I'm not a route to market expert, but I think of importance because of direct translation is make sure you know who your target market is. And then make sure you know what you're solving for that target market. It's just not competing for the sake of competing. I'll give an example. Equity made all banks start activations. Did you realize at some point every bank had an activation tag outside and they were settling the account? And you thought the target market for Equity versus the target market for Standard is black and white,
Yeah.
So it's important to understand, first of all, who your target market is, and then for that, then design for them. And I'm sure there's so many ways to go to route to market. Some of them are subtle, some of them are big bang. Yeah, so
yeah.
At some point, I think we might want to also just bring in somebody who can actually give us ideas about this. Quick question, now that we're talking like this openly, and we're the four of us and we'll be in front of a full-on forum, how much content do we give pertaining the employers we have worked for? Wow.
A lot. That's a very interesting question. Wow, that's a very interesting question. Because it all goes again to disclosure, privacy. I think we need to be very careful on how much information. Maybe we can try and use some analogies to. Come again?
We can leave out names and then just leave the audience trying to figure out which.
Yeah. Because sometimes it might come back to bite you in a way. I don't know. I'm not so sure. But maybe to protect. Yeah. Oops. Petra is trying to talk.
But also, it's so interesting. We are saying we will leave out the employer yet on the what's it called, on the card,
the artwork,
the e-shot that you have clearly stated,
who you work for.
AP, Petra. So I think maybe if we want to change that and just make it senior and coach and leave it at that, then now we can have conversations where we leave out who we're actually talking about. But also, even for Safaricom, I think it might create a problem if we're even talking about, depending on what we're talking about, it might, we need to keep it a bit general, if you ask me, even when we're giving examples. Because even if we are not going to indicate anything on the issue, then it can easily be traced back to us that we are actually working for Safaricom, and then we know that we're actually talking about Safaricom. So I think we need to
wacha nikuambie
make the information
Safaricom inakuanga na bidii manze. Unasema kitu moja unapata huko hapo kwa nani? What's that guy who always is sabotaging a new angle to smear comments?
Man, I'm telling you, I know. Like I remember there's a podcast we did last week on OKRs. So I think there was this fella. He must be from the risk department from my own organization. So he comes in with a different rules. So he sends me an email asking for some sort. He tells me that he works with this organization and he needs help on ABCD. So I wasn't really explicit on what I needed to do to help him with, but I told him, okay, I can't share with you the details, the materials I used in the training, but what you can do, just reach out to me. Let me know when you're available for call, and we can have further discussion. Wow, how that information reached HR, I do not know, but I have a feeling that he was. I have a feeling.
So the question, I don't know, Petra, you've been in Safaricom longer. Is it at some point that we're supposed to actually have a conversation, if we talk to somebody internally, can we get that clearance?
Here's the thing. We don't, what I would suggest is that we keep what we're talking generic. Normally, unless you're saying I'm speaking on behalf of Safaricom, it's normally not a problem, unless, of course, now you're giving internal information manager that and the other. That's inside information that I probably wouldn't mention if we are in plenary. So we're having a conversation right now, it's just for people about work. But in plenary, I would suggest, first of all, if we try to get clearance, we're just going to run into turbulence, because then it becomes a risk dissection activity where, what exactly did you say? It's just become a nightmare.
Yeah.
But look, I think we've got freedom of speech, but what we need to do is just to keep it generic, because the idea here is to provide a bit of guidance based maybe on our experiences on generic agile, just the generic agile life cycle of ideation to release or to MVP or whatever.
Yeah.
So we need to keep it generic. That's what I think. You can give an example of when you experience a problem, just don't refer to the company or refer to, we can do it without necessarily stepping on anyone's toes. If you ask me, we're free to talk. Just don't refer to I'm speaking on behalf of Safaricom.
We just take out the, what do you call them? We take out the company names. Ukitaka kunipata so utanipata tu LinkedIn. We're very easy to find.
And then we just first, when you're doing your e-shot, remove that we are Safaricom. I don't know. So just write senior agile coach. If somebody can link it back to Safaricom, that's their business. Because then it's it gives a connotation that we're speaking on behalf of. So just leave Safaricom out, and then you could
if you want, you can even leave this thing out of it. Just call it agile coach so that guys can just have a conversation. I feel like sometimes I want to be called a scrum master because that is the basics of everything we do.
Yes,
so,
I'm a bit of deal. You guys, okay. Probably you can give a thought to this. We regard ourselves to agilists to take care and leave it
but
there.
that's the other thing. Agile enthusiasts, whatever.
Thank you. That's one.
So we leave out the titles,
agile enthusiasts, other agile practitioners. Just let's leave it at that.
Because today you might be calling me senior agile coach. I go to another organization, they call me a scrum master.
Yeah, true.
That's a way. You, Winnie, John, and myself. The other way we could do it is we could represent ourselves as a different entity. And you know what I'm trying to say.
That's good, but now we're on jobs platform, so.
I understand, because then the question is, again, it's okay. Let's use agile practitioners.
Just agilists, agile enthusiasts.
Okay, I'll talk to the designer and have him remove the company names and the titles. I just keep them simple as agile practitioners. Let's just be generic, because even for me, after that with a big bite, I wouldn't want another issue with.
Even you should consider just leaving it as agile coach, because APA or not, you're an agile coach, so you're not representing them in your podcast, isn't it?
I'm not representing them. True. So lastly, maybe as we close, there's this issue sometimes that I find that as you go to market, sometimes depending on the organization and the nature, let me say the dynamics of the organization and the environment, you may need support from internal staff to help drive adoption of the product. For example, you have people who are coming to the branches and need them to educate them more on the new product that is there. So then, how do you ensure that this category of people are actually catered for, and at the same time, they do not feel threatened by the product that is being rolled out? So you bring them in as collaborators, as your partners in your go-to-market strategy, and ensure that their fears, their anxieties are actually taken care of, and they actually help with the adoption. Because sometimes I find that when I was at Equity, one of the challenges that we had was sometimes we failed to include the branches in the rollout. And they would be the ones who would actually again make it very difficult to roll out that product, because they'll discourage customers, things like that. So how do you take care of such interests? The laggers that they're laggers, yes, but they're not really laggers. They're people who are actually
they can either make you or break you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this. I will tell guys, your stakeholder map needs to make sense, right? They might have high, what do you call it, on the scaling, where they might not have high influence, but they have high interest in the product, and those are usually your cheerleaders. Bring a representation into the room. These are some of the guys who you bring in for like beta testing and so on and so forth, and try and get in the buy-in. Another way of doing it is also by, like if you're doing something to do what, for example, reduce paper at a branch, for example. One of the ways of doing it is just by incorporating like KPIs in their day-to-day work, because at the end of the day, a KPI is designed to drive a certain behavior. So depending on what you need at that particular point, that's what you bring in. So if you need guys to be championing this way of working, then you ask them that. Then the less you have of this manual work you're doing and adopting more of the digital practices, then you're on point. Or trying to get customers on board. So if more of your portfolio, for example, has more of your customers utilizing these platforms, then that is a big win. So already when the next one we're launching comes out, people will be neck and neck. In fact, people will be asking you, this particular feature our customers don't like, and it's making them come back and do manual work, make us do paperwork. So how can you even solve for this? So they become your biggest champions versus being your detractors. I think you have to have a very clear stakeholder map to bring them in, from like the marketing guys to even the guys who will be selling the product that you have.
In addition, I think also a lot of us, after what Winnie has said, which is, ensuring that they are included all the way from start, we incentivize them. So we give them an incentive. Our people in our retail shops, for example, in our context, are salespersons, right? And the biggest thing for them is an incentive. So if you're able to if they have their skin in the game, then what is in it for them, isn't it? So in my experience, that has been the biggest driver of uptick. So because we've got many, very many products. So if you really want a demarcated effort to push certain verticals, it doesn't even have to be money necessarily, by the way. It just needs to be some sort of incentive as to why they're doing it. And more often than not, it works.
Yeah.
More often than not, it works. Yeah.
Interesting. So I think we've already carved out what we're going to talk about. It may not, all of it may not be in one 1 hour, but like we said, we'll do it in 2 bits, in 2 parts. So the first part will be next week. So I've already shared with you the calendar. So allow me to finish on the artwork with the designer. I'm just going to call him right after this to help me finish that, so that by tomorrow morning I share it with you. We start